Warning, this podcast episode contains mature themes and content that may be unsettling and triggering for some audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Hello guys and dolls, welcome back to my podcast, Conversations with Xalea. I'm your host, Xalea, and today is Monday, October 28th, 2024, and since this month is spooky month, I'm going to review a cult classic horror movie from the 1970s called Trilogy of Terror. Now, Trilogy of Terror was a 1975 made-for-TV movie that aired on ABC. That's composed of three separate anthology stories, with the lead character all being played by Karenblack. And the film has received is a well-known cult classic, and but one of its more notable segments is Xalea, which is the short story with the creepy zuni fetish doll. And I remember growing up watching this as a kid, and with the third segment being scared, always being scared about the third segment. Now there are two other stories, which is Julie and Melissa Therese, and all their stories are named after the female title characters, by the way. So let's jump right to his movie. But before we jump right to his movie, concerning the fact it was concerned plot points and characters, there will be spoilers for this movie, so if you haven't watched this movie, don't listen to this podcast. If you have watched this movie, listen to this podcast. And also there'll be a content warning at the beginning because of certain mature themes. So the first story is Julie. So the first story of the anthology is Julie, and the whole story with Julie is that Julie gets crushed as a college English professor who gets crushed on by one of her students, Chad, who winds up asking her out, but she pretty much rejects him because it's inappropriate for a teacher to date their students. But he winds up asking her out again, and she winds up accepting, and they go to see a movie. And as Chad is getting their drinks and concessions, while getting them sodas, Chad taints Julie's drink and gives them to Julie, which she notes there's a bitter taste. And she winds up feeling sleepy. Then while she's pretty much unconscious, Chad pretty much takes provocative photos of her and takes her back home. When she wakes, then Chad winds up developing set photos and pretty much uses those photos to blackmail Julie into doing his bidding, which winds up pretty much causes Julie to become more reserved, upset. Then while hanging out with Chad, she reveals that she's been manipulating Chad this whole time, instead of Chad manipulating her. And that she's pretty much has grown bored with Chad. And right after that confession, Chad winds up dying from drinking a poison drink that Julie poisoned her. And pretty much Julie sets his house on fire. Then the next day we're shown Julie and her roommate reading the newspaper story about what happened to Chad, and she winds up adding it to her scrapbook. And the short concludes with a student coming to the door, implying that the same thing would happen again. Then the second story is Millicent and Therese, which involves Millicent, a very Victorian-esque blonde who resents her sister Therese. And when one of Therese's flings visit the house, Millicent pretty much tries to warn him about Therese, stating how pretty much their backstory, namely Therese was in love with her dad and wanted to seduce her when she was 14 or 16 years old. Then their mom wound up dying thanks to Therese poisoning her. And pretty much the flame pretty much doesn't believe Therese's story and it is pretty much scared away by that story. Then the next scene, Millicent calls the family doctor / close friend, Dr. Ramsey, that Therese is pretty much all the bad things Therese did, which leads to Ramsey to visit the mansion. And when Ramsey visits the mansion, we meet Therese, and Therese pretty much is your typical promiscuous blonde. And Therese tries to seduce Dr. Ramsey, but when he rejects her, he throws her out the house. Then the next day, Millicent got ranting great about Therese. She winds up coming across a little girl whose dog got broken by Therese, which leads to Millicent thinking of a plan to pretty much end Therese by using a voodoo doll to kill her. The next morning, Dr. Ramsey visits and finds Therese dead, and when the inquest comes, it's revealed that Millicent and Therese are the same person, with Therese being real and Millicent being a alternative personality of Millicent being a alternative personality of Therese to cope with her wrongdoing, which you didn't see that twist coming, don't you? And it also means that Therese has dissociative identity disorder, which they used to call multiple personality disorder. It's a known fact that people with dissociative identity disorder, they tend to create a different person. The condition kind of stems from the particular condition stems from trauma, and they create alternative personalities just to cope with traumas. And I'm not trying to be insensitive in describing the condition. And as Dr. Ramsey revealed, Teresa's father died, made her even more unstable, which led her deleting herself. And the last and final and most infamous story is Amelia. And the last story focuses on Amelia, a woman who has an overbearing mom who lives in a high-rise apartment, and her mom is harassing her on the phone because she canceled their dinner plans just so she could go out, pretty much have dinner with her boyfriend, who's an anthropologist, and she's going to present a gift to her boyfriend, which is a zuni fetish doll. That's very creepily designed and has a chain that's pretty much, and there's a chain on the doll that pretty much preserves the spirit within the doll that says he who kills. And the chain winds up falling off when Amelia leaves, and which leads to the doll pretty much the doll becoming possessed and trying to kill Amelia. And the whole segment is super scary, and with good, decent social specs even for the 1970s with the doll. And the whole segment is pretty much the doll trying to kill Amelia, Amelia trying to stop or kill the doll, which she succeeds by putting it in the oven and burning it. And the movie ends with, and the short ends with Amelia being possessed by the doll spirit, essentially. And that, my friends, is my recap of Trilogy of Terror. It's a anthology horror movie that holds up very well and is very relevant, especially in regards to things like college assault, teacher-student romances, stalking, mental illness. It is because it's kind of sad we kind of overlooked the first two shorts in favor of the zuni fetish doll short, which all three shorts were great, and all three shorts were great in their own way. We should pretty much just acknowledge the third one because of the doll. And I should note that Trilogy of Terror, they made a sequel to Trilogy of Terror that was released in the late 90s, which I'm not going to watch, but I've stated that, but it's been stated that doesn't hold a candle to the second Trilogy of Terror. If anyone had watched the second Trilogy of Terror, let me know in the comments on Spotify or send feedback to me on my email. But that, my friends, is my review or recap of Trilogy of Terror. I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. In the next podcast episode, I will review the 2009 soap opera Camagato. I give my commentary or recap on it. That's why I probably haven't been making any podcast episodes, because I've been too busy watching that, though I've been skipping a few episodes, so I won't be crashing out at the stupid moments. Then the Kid Show Hot Takes episode, then an Anatomy of Rock episode on Shades the Charm, did a Meet the Podcast episode where you get to know me. I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. I'll see you guys later. Bye bye.